Your Tuesday nights with a show that's as educational as it is entertaining. Welcome to Pleasure Pulse, your weekly guide to the world of sex education. Join Roma every Tuesday.
I'm your host, Roma Richardson, and you're joining me live on ZIZ, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on video. I'm so happy to have you join me for another conversation, and I'm especially excited to get into tonight's topic. But as usual, before we jump into our conversation, let's take a short break so you can let everybody know that Pleasure Pulse is live, and then we will come right back and get into tonight's discussion. So stay tuned.
Get ready to ignite your Tuesday nights with a show that's as educational as it is entertaining. Welcome to Pleasure Pulse, your weekly guide to the world of sex education. Join Roma every Tuesday night from 8 to 9 p.m. exclusively on ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. It's the perfect way to spice up your midweek routine and get answers to all your burning questions. Whether you're looking for relationship advice or curious about the art of intimacy, Roma's got you covered. Pleasure Pulse, every Tuesday night from 8 to 9 p.m. Only on ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. Don't miss out. Your sex education journey starts this Tuesday with Roma as your guide.
This Father's Day, let's celebrate the ones who gave us everything by putting your brand in the spotlight with a deal that's hard to beat. From May 14th to June 15th, ZIZ is bringing you the ultimate steal of a deal. Our Father's Day promo package includes radio spot ads, a live interview, a TV slate, and a sponsored social media post of your interview. That's right, maximum exposure across radio, TV, social media for a price that'll make you say, yes, please. Don't miss your chance to celebrate dads and grow your business at the same time. Call 465-2621 or 662-8203 or email sales@zizonline.com to book your spot now. Limited slots are available. Secure your spots before it's gone. ZIZ, connecting you to moments that matter.
Get ready to ignite your Tuesday nights with a
Welcome back to Pleasure Pulse. I'm your host, Roma Richardson, and you are joining me another Tuesday, another conversation about a topic related to sex, sexuality. And I am so excited to invite my guest to introduce himself, really. And yeah, so how it goes is I let people introduce themselves, say whatever they want to say about themselves. Maybe you might want to say something that people don't know about you. But I have my guest here. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening, Roma. Good evening to the radio world. My name is Garth Wilkin, born in Boston, St. Kitts. I'm happy to be on the show.
Welcome. Happy to have you. I am so grateful that you accepted, and it was a very easy ask, so I appreciate that as well. And tonight, if you've seen the flyer, you know what we're talking about this evening. We are talking about revenge porn or non-consensual pornography. And I invited Garth here, who is the AG, as you all would know, to give us an idea of the law on revenge porn and to explain to us some of the amendments that are being made to the law, among other things. But of course, before we get into all of that, we want to start with a definition. So just tell us what revenge porn or non-consensual pornography is according to the law.
Well, I have bad news. We don't deal with it directly in the law
Okay.
as it is. This is good timing for me to be on the program because a couple months ago, my team drafted legislation which specifically addresses revenge porn. So we've taken it to cabinet. We're doing some consultations, public consultations, and hopefully very soon it will be tabled in Parliament. In that bill, which we're proposing, revenge porn will be specifically defined. There will be depictions of publications of an explicit nature that are disseminated without consent of the person that's in the video or the picture. So we're going to make it clear soon. Right now we have a generic provision in the Electronic Crimes Act which deals with the dissemination of images, video, any sort of electronic communication without consent of a person that causes harassment, the person to feel molested. It's very general, it's a very general provision called unlawful communication. And what we want to do is to make it more targeted and address it head on because it's a serious societal problem.
So let me give you all some context, I mean some backstory. And the backstory really just involves me and my own thoughts. I'm sure lots of you have watched Forever. I don't know if you've watched Forever on Netflix. It is probably number one, or up there in terms of views, highly viewed on Netflix right now. And it centers around two teens and their love story. One of the teens, the girl, she is a victim of revenge porn. She was with kind of dating-ish, this ex-ish of hers. And they, a sexual act was performed and he sent it to a friend and then that friend further, distributed it, sent it on to others. So she now is, in every series, movie, whatever it is, there is some conflict or something that the main actor or actress, protagonist wants or has to overcome. So that is the thing that she is battling with because she hasn't told her mother. She's had to change schools. So her life has been significantly affected by this act of revenge porn. The boy, on the other hand, not really happened to him. He's still going on, playing basketball, being chosen for college ball and stuff. And so he hasn't really experienced any consequences or any repercussions, but she has had to, deal with the shame and guilt of it. She has had to change school, as I mentioned. She has had to, find new friends, essentially uproot her life. And along with all of that, she has felt like she, couldn't tell her mother. So she is keeping that secret from her mother, and then, that is one of the things that she eventually has to do, to I guess help her heal from that. So it's not, it's something that happens and you move on, right? So I was thinking about that because I know that there space where I think a lot of it is disseminated now. But I remember when I was younger, there were a couple of people who, were victims of revenge porn. Some of them left St. Kitts, so some of them I have not seen in years. Some of them, started to essentially make themselves kind of invisible. Some people were able to, go on with life, and at least from the outside, it didn't seem like it fundamentally, changed their life. But for sure, emotionally, psychologically, the fact that people can be so cruel when things like this happen. So that's the reason that I, thought about this topic and thought that it could be a good thing to discuss now, especially when people are having conversations about how gender-based violence is moving online and how online spaces and technology are facilitating that gender-based violence. So that was my little shift on, the background for this topic and the choice of this topic now. I would encourage all of you to watch Forever if you haven't. So you've given us a definition of of revenge porn or of non-consensual pornography. Folks use different language to describe it, and it can happen in so many different contexts, right? So it could be a romantic relationship gone bad and an ex or a former partner. It could be a current partner. It could be a friend of an ex or former partner. It could be your phone got lost and people decide to send out your images. So it's like, let's talk about it. So you said that this new law is being drafted or has been drafted. Can you share an overview of that law, including what the consequences are if people are found guilty? I guess it's not online yet, but maybe you could tell us about, where we can participate in conversations around it. Let's start.
Yeah, so let me, if you allow me to, let me start by how this came up, actually, how it came into the forefront of our minds at AGO. I attended a youth conference a few months ago, and when I was leaving, two high school students from Nevis came up to me and they said, "Hey, Gino, we wanted to talk to you about something." I said, "Sure." They said that they are very concerned with what is happening in high school and even in primary school. They were speaking about Nevis and their experience, saying that there were a lot of kids that were sharing sexually explicit material by way of their phones and moving around the schools, and it just became so wild that they felt that something needed to be done about it in law to stop it. The law is one thing, and also social education is another. And that one hit me because it was students coming to me and saying, AG, we want you to consider this. So from that evening on, we've been working on trying the most modern version of law that we could kind of look at and make it bespoke for our circumstances, and that's how we got to develop this proposed amendment to the Criminal Law Act. And what it does, it addresses a few things. One of which is something maybe you should have a show about, which is the age of consent. Okay. So that is something that is being discussed. I believe that Sniper is going to have a debate shortly on that, because that's a open discussion throughout the Caribbean at the moment as to what the age of consent should be, and what the range for what we call the Romeo and Juliet exception, which is whether somebody's within a certain age range if they don't qualify for unlawful carnal knowledge. So we're having that debate as well simultaneously with this one, but I think this one is a little less controversial. It deals with minors exchanging images and videos amongst each other and the punishment that goes with that. And in the amendment, we have a section which is titled Publishing Depictions of Another Engaged in Sexually Explicit Conduct Without Consent. Legal language, but that's essentially revenge porn, because that's sometimes it might not be revenge. It might be someone. I remember there was one that happened in Trinidad where the person took in their laptop, get persons at the that a person commits the offense of publishing the picture. Now, if he or she disseminates or sells, if print that the sexually explicit conduct, where the publisher knows or has a reason to know that authorized to publish, print, disseminate, or sell such matter. So that's pretty clear, because persons they have somebody to disseminate it, but this eliminates that. This is when the person knows or has reason to know that they are not authorized to distribute the pictures or the videos. So the proposed, as I said, this is not set yet, but the proposed penalties are with respect. So there's a list in the I can't really spell out the list on the radio, I don't think, but there's a list of what we call sexually explicit conduct. So like for instance, A is sexual intercourse, including the different types, and then B is penetration of bodily parts. Then there is the self-pleasure. There's also other sorts of abuse and so forth, and then you go into the R. Kelly areas and those sorts of things. Those are listed. And then, so there's different penalties for the different levels of breaches. So if you go, so for example, here it says 2F. If you commit an offense with 2F to G, which are the really bad ones, you could, no, not the really, sorry, the less bad ones, you could spend a year, up to a year in prison. With respect to the or against the other person with respect to the sexual of all stages. We're doing public consultation. And so we're trying to address it head on. As I said, it's not just with adults. We're dealing with conduct. So it needs to be the social education. A bit might teach less, but see VHS. You wouldn't even know about that, Roma. You know, and Blockbuster and renting your video and popping into see and so forth, and you know, it happened then. I know there was an incident that happened when I was in high school with that. So it's not something that's brand new. It's just that we didn't have, whilst we had the internet, it wasn't as widespread. Now, people, I mean, I remember when I was in fourth form, came to the table, and we were that generation. School, I just wasn't as, you know, the internet didn't have easy to just snap your finger and just ruin somebody's life. So we have to address it head on.
So does this proposed law include image generation, or what people call, you know, what some people fakes?
Yes, it the definition it so it's fakes, and
so it doesn't actually because I know before maybe the penalty or like fines and so on.
Yeah, they also the law was also very general, so it's difficult offense to be specific. It's much easier to get a conviction and also to deter, because you know, unlawful communications is there, but it's so vague,
right?
I know, so people could be convicted under it, but you want criminal laws. But yeah, there were incidents. There was a famous case in Trinidad, probably one with was ex-girlfriend and shared it with somebody else and so forth. Or awarded. This damages really compensate time of
Yeah.
penalties exist, number one reason is to deter, not just to punish. It is to deter, to set a benchmark in your society. This is wrong. Do not do this. If you do, we want to do by bringing this amendment.
Because I and be considered as another act of, or one of the acts of technology facilitated gender-based violence, right? And if we think about other forms of gender-based violence, fine. To take it impact that it has on victims.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. Are you able to share more details of that Nevis case, or do you prefer not to get to, since we're moving away, shifting differently?
Well, I want to make it clear, just because they specific criminal sanction doesn't mean
Right.
well.
Yeah. Just
normally happens is if you have a revenge porn situation, you report it to the police can proceed with prosecution under the previous legislation. When this one comes under this legislation, the person could plead guilty, or you could go to trial, and then after that, then you could go into the civil realm and seek compensation, or you could potentially get compensation, not as much as if you would go for a civil suit. So then you could actually guilty conviction in a civil suit to be able to get an award of damages. So, but at the end of the day, that's not what you want, because the damage is already done.
Yeah.
No amount of money can you for because also it makes provide. So basically, an order that forfeited, like the file destroyed, if it's on a CD, destroyed. But the thing is very difficult.
Because I was reading about and somewhere in the US, some were about like relationships with social media work, and where a lot of these images appear, and whether there was law that could require something, you could report it, but Facebook okay, and what besides that? Okay.
No, but you can report it. I mean, you can directly report it. You could report posts on Facebook and for, you could say, sexually explicit. And typically, I think the algorithm can figure out if it's, and that normally happens quicker than if you say it's defamatory or some other, or it's offensive. Is that can like try to wipe the internet of different things. People's phones, people save it. When you click on your WhatsApp, so it's something that we really need to teach our kids about. I think my generation because we were the transition from analog to digital. We saw the impact that it could have. We went through the ICQs and the MySpaces and then the Facebook.
I don't know what ICQ is.
Yeah,
I know MySpace, but I'm like, ICQ? This sounded like CBQs. I was like, is that okay?
You would know ICQ.
No, but I know MySpace.
Yeah, MySpace and all of those, and Kazaa and all of those sites. Those, Kazaa? There was another very popular one where people used to get music from. People used to share their music. Yeah.
They're not coming to me, but yes.
Yeah, there were a couple.
They had LimeWire. You had all of those.
Yes,
yeah.
There were about 3 of them, including Kazaa, that you could get your music downloaded from. And so my generation, when I say my generation, I mean the 40s. Probably late 30s. Are we millennials? Yeah, I think we're millennials.
Yeah, up to a point, like late 80s.
I think
86, 85-ish.
You sure about that? I think millennials are 80 to 92 or something like that. If we're born. Age, we kind of saw it happening. So
81 to 96.
Yeah, see, I told you so.
Okay.
So that's the range I'm in.
Okay.
That's millennials, right? Okay, good. And we kind of saw that. So we have an understanding of what to do, what not to do. But young kids who grew up communicating by social media and WhatsApp and so forth, they're born into it. They don't know what it's like to be before. So they just send things straight. They post things. I mean, I see young kids with TikTok, and I can't even understand it. How parents could allow children to be on that. And AGs in the States brought a case against TikTok, and one of the things they said in it was that under 16-year-olds spend 30 minutes on TikTok and they become actually clinically addicted. So that is why in Australia, I believe that they've blocked persons under 16 from using it and so forth. But the point is, though, that's just a sidebar. The point is that young kids are growing up with the technology. They have phones, they have iPads and so forth, so they share whatever. They don't know of the consequences. That's the advantage of being an adult. You kind of see things. While you don't know something is happening unless you're taught by your parents or they teach you in school. So I'm hoping that part of the curriculum in school. I remember when I was sexuality and so forth, but I was in Antigua when I was in primary school there, and I hope that's being done in the schools here. In the wrong hands. The legislation also deals with the existing legislation deals directly with child pornography,
right.
But this one goes a little further, dealing with it directly as well. So it addresses not just adult to adult, it addresses adult to child, and it addresses child to child, because that's the child to child is how this even came within my immediate sphere of thought. So we're trying to address it, but it's really a societal matter. You could do as much as you can with laws and penalties and so forth, but it's the public education that matters.
Right.
But it's difficult to put out PSAs about that. You can, but it's really for the parents and the teachers to explain to the children. Listen, this is wrong. Hopefully, when we debate it in Parliament, people will listen and they will say, okay, this is here now, and this is how this could be so damaging to you in the long term. It could affect your career opportunities and so forth, depending on what you do. Like similar to what you explained in the TV show, what it appears. You move schools, you're embarrassed, you're going to shame. We had an incident. I remember when I was in Bastia High, we had an incident where which they had to meet it. Where there was a incident involving students, and it became a big. It was very embarrassed about it, and affect. Long, I couldn't imagine what you could go through. People suffer from PTSD. Some people go into serious states of depression. So it's a very serious matter. I'm happy you're bringing it to the fore. Hopefully parents are listening. I know this kid should be sleeping right now, but hopefully parents are listening so they can have that conversation, because I'm going to have that conversation with my children. My children are 9 and 10.
Yeah.
I really should start thinking about having that conversation with them. They don't have phones, but have tablets and so forth, and you never know what they're learning on the internet. You try to filter as much as possible, but the point is they're going to school.
Right, and they have friends with phones.
And might not have parental controls that I would have on theirs. They might be friends with persons who don't have those controls, and then you don't know what they're exposed to, and they think it's cool. Because remember, I remember high school, even though it was a long time ago. It was very important in those days to be cool. Somebody was just telling me, having a conversation about that, talking about they were growing up. Somebody was telling me they were growing up in the 50s and 60s, and they were saying what was cool. What was cool was going out to disco and party and drinking and smoking, and so that was cool, because when you're young, it's almost inherent in you. You want to be cool, and there's a metric now. In my day, cool was just cool, but there was no metric. Now, how many likes you get is the determinant of whether you're popular. And might viral, out of control. So young people that they shouldn't do that. They shouldn't do it for their likes and embarrass themselves or cause them long-term harm. Just for temporary gratification or popularity, which is a lot of the time what happens with these videos. And then they have the inherent issue of couples that break up, especially immediately on the breakup. You're hurt and you say, I want to punish that person, I want to make them feel pain, so I'm going to embarrass them. There was an incident like that recently in St. Kitts, and somebody, and then there's the other issue of somebody in a extra relationship affair. What would you say that? Somebody having two partners, for example, and then one partner finding about the other, searching a phone and
cheating.
Yes.
Yes, no, not married.
Yeah, not married. It doesn't have to be married, but cheating. One person discovers, searches the phone, finds pictures of another, and then sends them around, which is a criminal offense. And we need to educate people to not do that, to not react emotionally. And that's why laws are in society, and educate is our duty as persons who have a voice, like you, who have a voice. Honorable Congressman and I did a debate for our daughter's class, and the question was that we were debating is should grade 5 students use social media? And one of the things, I was yes and he was no. And one of the things I said was, do you live in your parents' house or do you live in your classroom? I said no, you live in the world, and you need to know about the things that happen in the world. If you're too sheltered, then when you get out in the world, you won't be able to manage it, because it's not easy out there in the world. So you have to prepare children. You have to talk to them. When they reach a certain age, try to talk to them as straight as you can to let them understand that something like this, sharing pictures or videos of yourself, of your private parts, is not a good thing. That should be something that you share with your intimate partner, and it shouldn't be something that you spread widely. Adults could do that and take the risk, but children definitely should not be.
I just want to add to, that I'm big on prevention, right? So I appreciate what you said about conversations and about social programming, teaching, cool. Consensual dissemination. So today, the most hated men online. To had this website where people could anonymously themselves. So of themselves with their consent, but of other people without their consent. So people would just be, at work or wherever, and then next thing they have 200 notifications, or they wake up to 200 notifications, or people are calling them to say, you are on this website. And he didn't really care, but the impact on the victims was so severe. One person attempted suicide, had other women who had this principal walked into, you have to leave. And these were people, a lot of them were hacked, so they didn't even send the but they saved them to or sent them to themselves via email or however they but their videos, pictures and so on found uploaded, and it was really difficult to get them removed and so on. The guy really didn't care at all. His intention was to ruin people's lives. So you have cases, we did talk about like people finding maybe you lost your phone somewhere, or maybe you took your devices to a store where you thought they would be safe, and then people found these things for you and they uploaded them. So I think like there's one thing about taking all of those cases, right? The pictures were really just meant for the person, like the person not sent where, but there is still a risk to folks because other people feel like they are exploit, sometimes even extort people, doing things really important for us to talk about how damaging it is for people to participate in distributing other people's stuff. So because especially people who are or feel like they're in the safety of a relationship or people material to their partners, maybe or whatever,
or they have a long distance relationship.
Do these things not expecting it to happen. So I understand the approach of you don't know what will happen, so sometimes it's best to avoid things entirely, because how many supposedly safe platforms have had data breaches, right? So it's like it's on there forever.
On somebody's server.
Like, so my position, it's like for everything there is it's so but as in is a video or a picture of somebody, don't participate in forwarding it to anybody else.
That's one of the things I was going to say, because the person that's a criminal offense.
How do you find that out? You work with Flo?
No, suppose
somebody who receives it can report the forward.
Let me give you an easy way, because these things spread in trouble for that in last year. It was a colleague of mine that was under threat because people were forwarding ridiculousness, right? So I don't have a problem with standing up for anyone. So, and that's minor matters. But the point is, we have to be responsible when we click forward. Things go so quick. Think of it.
Yeah.
Because the person who forwards is just as culpable and liable as the person who initially sent it. But I'll give you an example. couple breakup, woman, let's normally is the man, but let's put it on the other foot. Woman is upset, sends around a video of her, of the man and her, for example, and goes to John and Charlie and Bob and Cecile, and they then forward it to other people on their whole WhatsApp list or whoever, or groups. And in that group is the cousin of the guy. Mm. And then the person that goes say, oh, how could you be forwarding that? And then they could report to the police and give a statement saying, listen, I got this number from 762-4799. And this is, I know this person to be XYZ. And then that person could have the police at the door. You know? So education, see, I believe in when we go into Parliament and we deal with issues, like, for example, when we dealt with the Domestic Violence Amendment, which was very important, very simple but very important, which women or any victims of domestic violence, women, to go to a magistrate's court, not have to get a lawyer and get a restraining order. Mm-hmm. People have to be able to take advantage of, people have to know. So platforms like radio, television, FAQ, like when we passed a law the other day, we prepared tools, frequently asked questions, so people can understand how it works. Public education is key, so it's not just words on paper, people understand. And when we do this, and the reason why this hasn't even, the Ministry of Social Development is doing all of the consultations, Sniper is going to debate it, and all of those different things, and then we're going to change things. So this age of consent and the Romeo and Juliet provisions and so forth that are being proposed, that you want to get the so then if you terrorism, so this, you forwarders, the forwarders out there, you know, be responsible when you forward things. You know, do you want to be participating in some, what if that happened to you? Mm-hmm. Would you not want the person to receive it to say, and we have to, you know, become more mature as a society to realize that, especially in the world where it is right now. I mean, I've seen some very good deep fakes. Heaven help us in the next election, because, you know, some bad people are going to create some very bad deep fakes, and they have image manipulation. All of these things are going to be responsible members of our society to say, listen, no. Something you see, if you church you know, is this so? Because naturally that would be big international news. It would be on BBC, Al Jazeera, and so forth and so on. But we tend to just forward without thinking, and this is problematic, because with the evolution of AI, where anybody with an app can create a video just by saying, I want to see this picture. Off, or you have to be strict, or you have to be like a nun or a teacher. No, I laugh. That, but when it becomes harmful, is when we have to take a step back and say, well, I'm not going to forward this because it's irresponsible to do so. What if it were me? And maybe that's the question. What if this were me? Should be the test. But that all comes with public education. There's another factor too, which is a little sidebar as well, because I attended a conference with the person in charge of tech of the Central Bank of Canada. And she was explaining that with deep fakes, what is the anti-deep fake is that real videos are going to soon have something embedded in them so that if we don't see it, then we will know it is not official. Imagine that, eh? We're going to have to reach the point where videos, we have to prove that they're real because they could be deep fakes. Imagine that. So they're developing a universal system where there'll be it's almost like on money, you know, you have these holograms on money. If you don't see that
and
particular
authentication.
Exactly. It's an authentication process that's going to happen with videos. So that if you see Donald Trump speaking, if you don't see that little thing on the top right corner, it means it could be a deep fake. Imagine that kind of world that we are approaching right now, and that anybody could put Roma's face on somebody else's body and create a video of Roma kissing some other person with who they took the person's face and put it on somebody else's body. Or people will then a very strange world. I know old people like me tend to say, oh, this world is coming to an end, but it really, these sorts of technological advances where you don't real and for what is not. You used to be able to trust journalists, you used to be able to trust particular newspapers that they would telling you the truth, even though they had an opinion was a fact. Oh, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares whether it's true, whether it's not, whether it's fake, whether it's not. We just love to click forward.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Sorry for making your show so heavy tonight.
No, it's okay. I mean, the topic was heavy, and then we're talking about it in law, so that by default makes it a little heavier because we're talking serious things, which is still important. You know, I mean, my approach is very tries to be very sex positive. So, you know, you talk about things like pleasure and so on, but these are realities. And these are, unfortunately, you know, things that people become victims of. And I mentioned earlier, you know, like knowing some folks who were victims of revenge porn who kind of disappeared. And so I'm wondering, and nothing happened. Right? Like no cases were pursued or anything. So I'm wondering if there's a statute or if there will be a statute of limitations in these cases.
Well, in the civil case, the statute of limitation for an action like that is 6 years. But there's technically no statute of limitation for criminal matters, technically. But a criminal matter is only as good as the evidence you could present. So if you wait for 10 years, it's not like the states where you could wait for 30 years. It potentially is there, but wait for 30 years and then bring your case. You know, it's going to be very difficult to get everything together to be able to prosecute from a practical perspective. So there's no real statute of limitation for the criminal action. But really, you should do it contemporaneously. A lot of people don't do it because they're so embarrassed, you know. They don't, because they figure, okay, well, yes, it happened. You're hoping that after 9 days it will go away. And then, but if you bring a case now, then you're dealing with it for another 2 years, and every time you face the person, you're dealing with it.
Yeah.
So
and
people approach things differently.
But it's still very important. But I think it is, and that's why I appreciate considering it as part of, you know, or within that realm of gender-based violence, because a lot of gender-based violence cases are also not reported for similar reasons. It is shame. It is, you know, believing that you might have been responsible for it. It is the perceived or real response that you will get from people who are expected to help you. So I also wanted to ask you about the process for reporting cases like this. And I know you talked about like the age distinctions or age groups. So whether it is adult to adult or adult child or child. It doesn't seem like there's any distinction among genders, so anyone can report a crime like this, and I appreciate that. Although we know, like in practice or in reality, you know, the response that different genders get might be different. But yeah, I wanted you to tell us about the process for what generally might be the process for reporting cases like this, what the process is now, and what the process will be, and what rights victims have during that process.
Well, the process should be the same. I would advise someone if they're a victim. Well, okay, let me start with this way, because we didn't talk about this. If somebody threatens, so say you have a breakup, and the person says, I'm going to leak your photos, all these photos you send me, then what I would advise is, one, you go to the police to make a report about that because a threat of a criminal action, and two, go to a lawyer because the lawyer may be able to get an injunction now to prevent the person from
doing.
Yeah, and potentially you could get a forfeiture of the, or you know, you get a, because an injunction is you could go to the court without the other person and say, listen, this person's threatened me. I have the threat in my WhatsApp that they're going to disseminate this material. I need to get an injunction. The injunction is served on them. The injunction says if you must delete the files, or it would say if it's disseminated, you're then in contempt of court, and then that will be a further punishment, separate and apart from the actual offense of disseminating. And then hopefully you could get the person would realize, okay, this is serious now. So you could potentially prevent the action from taking place. So if there's a threat of, I recommend you go to the police, make a report. You go also, after you go to the police, go to your lawyer first, then go to the police, because the lawyer might help you to formulate your statement better. But either way, you go immediately. Now, if you're a victim, so if it happened already, what you should do is go either to your lawyer or to the police first, make the report, give your statement, and also refer it to your lawyer. Because as I said, the penalty could be criminal as well as civil. And then the only difference would be you could potentially get a forfeiture order from because all you have to do to prove that the images or the video, the person doesn't have consent, is that you show them, I didn't give them consent. Yeah. It's a very easy affidavit. My partner took a video of me and them. It was for private use. It was for our internal pleasure or whatever. And we broke up, and the person has now disseminated that video. I did not give him or her that permission to disseminate that video. The law says that the person cannot do that. I feel harassed, etc., and I want the video to be destroyed. And then you could either get an injunction to destroy it, or you could get an order from the court in the criminal realm for it to be forfeited, and then you take action by criminal prosecution or civil to recover damages. Because the law is clear now that it's a tortious damage to do that. So and you could get compensation depending on how widely it was spread. Was it posted on Facebook? Was it posted on YouTube? Was it sent on WhatsApp? Was it the talk of the town? Might be a little harder to present that evidence, but if you bring 5 people who say, I got it from, all 5 people say they got it from a different person, then you could exponentially calculate how many people had it, and then you could go from there. So that's what I would recommend anybody that has experienced that they should get legal advice, and they should also report it to police, because it is a crime now. It's just that it's a very general crime. We're going to make it much more detailed to deal with it directly head on.
Okay. And what about the rights of victims during that process? Do people have, I don't know, I don't know how to get more specific than that, but I guess talking about, for example, training of police to understand the nature of the crimes that they're dealing with, the responses that they give to people who are reporting those crimes, the extent of their investigations, stuff like that.
Yeah. So the DPP is very big on that, and we have a criminal justice consultant who's here for the next 6 months to deal with getting training for the police, for prosecutors, because you don't want to show up at, for example, the police and they say, "What, you girl, you're stupid, eh?"
You're right.
As
And
the first thing you hear.
I never hear about that crime in my life or anything like that.
Yeah, so training is important. So we're getting some funding from international organizations to do that, because victim rights are important. They're the real persons who have suffered,
Right.
when a crime is done. So we're doing that. We're also setting up properly our mediation division in our Access to Justice Authority. So potentially you could, even after it's done, you could have a mediation between the parties. So they could, you never know.
If it is desired by the victim.
Of course. If it's something, if they feel like emotionally they need to have,
but not
to
that like
express themselves.
police would be like, y'all should try.
No.
Right,
This is
okay.
on the trained environment.
Okay.
Or you could have restorative justice, where if the person gets convicted under the first section and spends a year in prison, when the person comes out, restorative justice is to really allow the victim to be able to move on, because the victim might feel like, oh, you're going to do something else again, and then they could. So we're trying to work out those kind of societal mechanisms within the ministry, so that they. I mean, for example, let me give an example. If the incident happens with a male releasing a video or image of a female, and the person pleads guilty, for example. What we're trying to bring into place is that potentially, because sometimes the victims just want punishment, they don't necessarily want you to go to prison.
Right.
Say they have a child, they don't want the child to be without a father. So then we can have potentially a mediation to resolve that, and then we can then have a request an alternative sentence, like a suspended sentence, where they don't go into prison, but if they commit another act during that time, then they'll serve their time. And different ways to deal with other than locking the person up. Proved in society that there are other punishments that can exist that make the person realize that I shouldn't do this again, because to deter you, to punish you, to deter you. But it doesn't have to be just clank in the prison. There are other ways. So we're working on an alternative sentencing, a caution system. So if for example, there's a criminal offense, say you destroy somebody's rear backlight in a car, which is a criminal offense, and you could get like 6 months for that. The DPP could say, okay, boy, this was just somebody in a rage of anger. They saw their girlfriend in the car with another man, and they did it, for example, and they could say, okay, well, we're going to give you a caution this time, and you have to do community service, so that every Tuesday you have from 4 to 8 you have to go and mentor or do something which is semi-punishment, semi-community engagement, and or clean vacant lots or whatever, and that way the person is punished. There's community service in the States, you see people might clean the side of the road and for a couple hours a week, so kind of pay their dues. So we're trying to introduce that system soon, and we're also trying to deal with the victim rights unit in the DPP's office, so that victims don't feel like they're just being knocked around or they're not an important part of the process.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate that. Let's talk about that alternative sentencing, especially with the example you gave off air. We are at 9:00, so we are at the end of tonight's discussion, but I want to end with asking you where folks can participate in those conversations, because I haven't seen any flyers or anything about them. So how do people get involved? Because I'm sure lots of people want to be
involved
in those consultations on this
social
new
development is
legislation.
leading it, but as I said, they're one of the main things to kind of kick it off is going to be the sniper debate. That's probably going to put it out in the atmosphere, and then Social development will deal with, how they receive, whether there's, send an email with your thoughts or maybe go on the radio. People could call in and give their thoughts and so forth before we then bring it to Parliament.
Okay.
So there'll be a chance to discuss it. And the statistics are there. Their recommendations are there. The revenge porn and the child pornography and child-to-child exchange of sexually explicit images, that's pretty clear. We're going to go ahead with that. But the other aspects of the amendment, which we need to get more public consultation on it. So they're leading that charge, and we will see how that goes. But it's going to, I know that they've already reported to us on the initial findings and stuff, just from their technical data. Remember, they're the ones in the trenches.
Right.
They're seeing the issues. They're the guidance counselors. They're getting input. They're the ones. They're the first line that get the report. Oh my God, of the child in high school crying because her partner in high school sent something to the boys in his class or whatever. So we're gonna get all that information and then kind of shape it accordingly. So the only thing I would say is listen out to social development.
Okay, so stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. And this is one of those ones we're going to have some widespread consultation on.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciated your insight on this proposed law. I'm looking forward to reading it myself and to sharing ideas. And I encourage all of you listening and those of you who are yet to listen to participate in that conversation when it comes up, because it's an important part of our, unfortunately, society is an important, it's an important conversation to be part of, because there are too many people who have been victims of revenge porn or non-consensual pornography. There are too many folks who have had to endure things that they shouldn't have had to endure. So I encourage all of you, to participate in that conversation when they become live and when the information is published. And I would encourage you, I started talking about Forever. I encourage you to watch it and have conversations with your partner, with your partners, with your children, with your parents, anybody,
with partners, because you said plural.
Partners. I'm very open here, like as you mentioned, different generations have had their version of revenge porn, and it's not something that has to happen. It's not just a part of life.
No.
And so we can make changes beyond the law, to prevent us reaching to the law for things like this. So thank you again for joining us, and I want to wish you all a pleasurable evening, as I usually do, but it's kind of hard. But I wish you a reflective evening. And I will see you all next Tuesday. Did you have any final words? I didn't even ask you.
I was going to say it was a pleasure to be on the show.
Okay,
yes,
thank
and
you.
Good night to everyone. Be safe and be responsible.
Thank you. And see you all next Tuesday. Take care, y'all. Bye.